One shot on target, 93 minutes. That's when Manchester United finally troubled a goalkeeper. Let that sit for a second. 93 minutes into a Premier League match against a new promoted side, a side that had never played in this league before last August. And the first time our goalkeeper was tested in the opposite end was in stoppage time. That is not a bad day. That is not an off day. That is a systemic problem dressed up in the costume of a harmless goalless draw. And I know some of you are already typing, we're already in the Champions League. Relax. I hear you, but no, we are not doing that today. We are not using the table position as a shield to avoid the conversation that actually needs to happen, because what I watched this afternoon at the Stadium of Light told me more about this Manchester United squad than any win this season. It told me about our ceiling. And I think you need to hear this. I'm Bella. Welcome to Bella MUFC Analysis. If you're new here, this channel doesn't do spin. We don't sugarcoat. We talk about Manchester United like adults who actually understand the game. If that's what you want, subscribe now. Hit the bell and let's get into it. Right, so Sunderland away, 0-0. And the headline everyone's running with is Lammens, 2 incredible saves, man of the match, hero of the hour. And yes, I'll get to him because there is a really interesting conversation to be had there. But I want to start somewhere else. I want to start with a question that I think cuts right to the heart of this. How does a Manchester United team managed by someone with Carrick's tactical intelligence go to Sunderland, a team with no European pedigree, no Champions League experience, no multi-100 million pound squad, and produce 0 shots on target for 92 minutes? How does that happen? Because it's not just about Xerxy having a nightmare. It's not just about the absence of Sesko or Casemiro. Those are factors, yes, but they're not the answer. They're the excuse, and there's a difference. Let me explain what I mean. When you take Sesko out of this United team, you don't just lose a striker, you lose the reference point of the entire attack. Sesko is the reason the midfield pushes higher. He's the reason the wide players get the freedom they do, because defenders have to account for his movement. He drags centre-backs into uncomfortable positions. He creates the second ball situations that Mainu and Mount are supposed to exploit. Remove him and suddenly those spaces don't exist. And if you replace him with Xerxy, a player whose entire game is built around linking, not leading, you've fundamentally changed your attacking structure. You've asked a chess piece to do a job it was never designed to do. That's not Xerxy's fault. Well, it's partly his fault. We'll get there. But my point is Carrick chose to start Xerxy. Mbeumo was on the bench. Mbeumo, who has 9 Premier League goals this season, was warming the bench while Xerxy was failing his audition in real time. And I genuinely don't understand that decision. Now, I know what some of you will say. You'll say Carrick wanted to give Xerxy a chance, a final opportunity to prove his worth before the summer. And maybe that's true. Maybe that was the logic. But here's the thing. You don't run a trial during a match. You don't experiment in a Premier League fixture to audition a player for a contract decision. That's not how it works at the top level. And the fact that Carrick made that call and then had to bring Mbeumo on to try to rescue something that tells me either he genuinely believes Xerxy could do it or the decision was made above him. Either way, it didn't work. And Xerxy, look, I've defended that man more times than I care to remember on this channel. I've said he needs to. I've said the system hasn't suited him. I've said his best years are still ahead of him. After today, I'm not saying those things anymore because what I saw wasn't a player struggling in the wrong system. What I saw was a player who looked like he had mentally already left the building. The ball was bouncing off him. He was half a second late to every first touch. His movement was non-existent. There was a moment in the second half, and if you watched, you saw it, where a ball was played into feet and he just stood there. No movement, no attempt to spin, nothing. That is not a Sesko problem. That is not a system problem. That is a player who is switched off, and the numbers back it up. In 2 years at this club, 2 years, he has 9 goals and 4 assists in over 70 appearances. He cost us £36 million. He signed a contract until 2029. And Ineos right now are trying to figure out how to sell him without taking a catastrophic loss. That's the reality. Here's what I find fascinating though, and this is the part nobody's really digging into. Xerxy himself doesn't want to leave. Reports from earlier this month are clear. He wants to stay. He wants to fight for his place. He thinks the Champions League next season changes things. So you've got a player who wants to stay, a club that wants to sell, and a price tag that nobody in Italy is willing to meet on a permanent deal. Juventus want a loan, Roma want a loan, Atalanta are interested on their terms. United paid 36 million. They want to at least break even. The market says 15 to 20 at best. That is the definition of a transfer nightmare, and that negotiation is going to define a big chunk of our summer window. Because here's the knock-on effect, and this is where it gets really important. United cannot fund a proper striker signing without moving Xerxy on first. The books don't allow it. Mbeumo and Cunha can play centrally in a pinch, and Chido Obi is being fast-tracked into the first-team picture for next year. But if we're serious about competing in the Champions League, and I believe we should be, we need a proper number 9 with Sesko as our first choice and a quality backup. And we can't do that until Xerxy's deal is resolved. That's a domino, one domino that affects everything. Now, let's talk about Carrick, because the manager conversation is unavoidable after this performance. To be clear, I am not calling for Carrick out, not at all. The man has done something genuinely impressive since January. 10 wins in 14 games, Champions League secured, a team that looked broken under Amorim, suddenly believing in itself again. That is real, that matters. And I think it would be deeply unfair to take this result, one match, injury hit, end of season, and use it to undermine everything he's built. But I also think we have to be honest about what today showed. Carrick United at their best are incredibly well organised, they press with purpose, they transition quickly, they're hard to break down. And in matches where they have their full strength squad, they look like a genuinely dangerous side. But today stripped all of that away, no Sesko, Casemiro, and suddenly the attacking plan had no foundation, and that worries me slightly, not massively, but slightly, because a top-level manager, one who is going to be managing Champions League football next season, needs to have a plan B. He needs to have the tactical flexibility to adapt when his best players aren't available. And today, I didn't see that flexibility. I saw a 4-2-3-1 that looked exactly the same as it always does, except the key ingredient was missing and nobody adjusted to compensate. Now, and I'm genuinely asking you this, not rhetorically, does that concern you about next season? Because it concerns me. A little. Not a lot. A little. In the Champions League, you will face nights where your first choice striker is missing, where your defensive midfielder is suspended, where your creative hub is injured. And on those nights, the manager's tactical depth is exposed or validated. Today was a preview of that exposure. And this is why the Carrick permanent appointment conversation is more nuanced than the Guardian's "it's his to turn down" framing suggests. Yes, the results have been outstanding. Yes, the players love him. Cunha said he brought Ferguson vibes back to the dressing room. Fernandes and Maguire have publicly backed him. Kobbie Mainoo signed a new long-term contract and reportedly has real belief in the project. That's an incredible foundation. But United's hierarchy, Jason Wilcox, Omar Barada, they are also looking at this through a longer lens. They're asking, is Carrick ready for the demands of managing Manchester United in the Champions League in a title race? Under the pressure that comes with this club at full intensity, the answer might be yes. I actually think it probably is yes. But today raised the question louder than anything has in months. And there is one other name being mentioned, Luis Enrique. Now, I'll be honest, part of me understands why that name is being floated. He's managed at the highest level, he's won leagues, he's had Champions League experience, he's proven in big games. But here's what I keep coming back to. Luis Enrique would be starting from scratch. He would need time to embed his ideas. He doesn't know this squad. He doesn't have the dressing room trust that Carrick has built organically over 4 months. And in football, especially at Manchester United, dressing room trust is everything. You cannot buy it, you cannot manufacture it. Carrick has it, genuinely. The question Ineos has to answer is whether they trust the process or chase the name. Tell me in the comments, what would you do? Carrick or Luis Enrique? I want to know where you stand on this, right? Let's talk about Lammens, because honestly, and I mean this might be the most interesting subplot of the whole day. 2 saves that kept a clean sheet. 2 saves that preserved a point that United probably didn't deserve. The first one, Sadiqi's shot, breaking in behind the defence, was excellent. Positioning, reflexes, decision to push around the post rather than parry into danger. That was a goalkeeper who knew what he was doing. The second one, Brobble, powerful, central to goal, inside the box. That save was genuinely world class. And here's what I want you to think about, because I think this is a storyline that's going to grow significantly over the summer. Andre Onana is Manchester United's number 1. He's on a big contract. He's been at the club for 2 years. And this season, not catastrophically, but noticeably, he has had moments of uncertainty, moments where the decisiveness you need from your goalkeeper hasn't been there. Lammens, who came in as backup, is showing a composure and an authority that is catching attention, not just from fans, from people at the club. Is he ready to be the Champions League starter next season? Probably not yet. Is he ready to push Onana harder than he's ever been pushed at United? Absolutely. And that is healthy. That is exactly what a squad competing at the top level needs. The era of goalkeepers getting comfortable in their number 1 shirt with no genuine threat is over at this club. And for that, Lammens deserves enormous credit for what he's put on the table. Now, I want to zoom out for a second because there's a bigger picture here that I think is worth sitting with. This Manchester United team right now, today, is in a genuinely strange place. And I say that with love, not criticism. They've overachieved relative to where they were in January. Genuinely, they were in chaos. Moran was gone, the season looked like a write-off, and Carrick came in and somehow extracted 10 wins from what felt like the ruins of a campaign. That is remarkable. I'm not taking that away from anyone, but the squad that produced those 10 wins is the same squad that couldn't register a shot on target for 92 minutes against Sunderland. And that's the tension that's going to define this summer. The good results haven't hidden the fact that this squad has some fundamental imbalances. Midfield depth without Casemiro is thin. The striker position beyond Sesko is a genuine problem. And the wide areas, whilst Ahmad and Mbeumo can both be brilliant, lack the consistency to carry the team on nights when the central structure breaks down. Summer is critical, not important, critical. The list of things that need to happen is long, and I want to run through it quickly because I think it matters for understanding what version of United we'll see next September. Xerxy almost certainly leaves. The funds from that sale, whatever they are, go towards striker reinforcement. Sesko stays as the main man. A backup striker comes in. Mount, and this is a difficult one, is increasingly looking like a player whose United career is winding down. I hope I'm wrong, I genuinely do. But look at the evidence. He had a rare start today, he got booked, he couldn't control the midfield, and he was eventually the weak link. If Carrick gets the permanent job and is shaping his own squad, I'm not sure Mount features in those plans. Midfield cover needs addressing. Without Casemiro being fully reliable and at his age, that question is only going to grow. Mainoo needs a proper partner who can do the defensive work. That search should already be happening. And then there's the question of whether the tactical system evolves, because if Carrick is the permanent manager, he's going to have his fingerprints all over recruitment, which means the squad that arrives in pre-season will be shaped around his ideas, and his ideas primarily are built around vertical, high-energy football with a strong striker reference point. Which brings us all the way back to Sesko being fit. When Sesko plays, this team makes sense. When he doesn't, as we saw today, nothing quite connects. That is too much reliance on one player for a club with Champions League ambitions, and I think Carrick knows that. I think that's actually why Xerxy got the start today, not just as an audition, but as a test of whether the system can work in a different way. It couldn't. But at least now there's clarity. Clarity can be valuable even when it's painful. One more thing before I close, and this one's for the Sunderland fans watching, because I know some of you are here, and honestly, fair play. Your team deserved more today. I'm not going to be precious about it. Siddiqui was everywhere. Brobby was a handful. Talby caused real problems down the right. Regis Lebres had a game plan and his players executed it. The post was your worst enemy. Lammens was the second worst. You are a newly promoted side sitting comfortably mid-table in the Premier League with a head coach who is clearly building something. That's not nothing. That's actually really encouraging for next season. Just thought it was worth saying, because credit where it's due. Right, so where does this leave us? United go into the final two games needing 1 point to secure third place. Nottingham Forest at home next, then Brighton away on the final day. Third place would be a remarkable achievement given where this club was in January, genuinely. And I'll be the first to say that when it's confirmed. But third place is also the floor, not the ceiling. And the gap between what this squad produced today and what Champions League football demands next September, that gap is the whole story of the summer. The question isn't whether we're good enough to be in the competition. We've earned that right. The question is whether this squad, this recruitment setup, this managerial decision produces a team that can actually compete once we get there. I want to believe it can, I really do. But one shot on target in 93 minutes tells me we're not there yet, and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. So let me know what you think. Where do you stand on Carrick? Sell Xerxy at a loss or hold? And is Lammens pushing for that #1 spot next year? Drop it all in the comments. Let's actually have the conversation. If this video gave you something to think about, if it felt different from what you usually watch like it, share it. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, you're genuinely missing out on analysis that doesn't talk to you like you don't understand football, because you do. And that's exactly why you're here. I'll see you for the Forest build-up. Don't miss it.